Hi, I'm Kat Sweeney. I am a master certified ADHD coach who works with students, parents, and adults who have ADHD. To me, happiness is being able to be your authentic self and be accepted for exactly who you are.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love that. That's happiness for me too. So how
Yay!
did you Yeah, so how did you come across that is your happiness?
So I have ADHD myself, and spent a lot of time trying to hide it, trying to fix it, trying to be somebody else. And so did my kids. And so I just decided one day that, being authentic was what was going to make me happy. And I really think that that's what makes most people happy is the ability to be who they are um, without having to filter or judge or mask.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So what does that look like with ADHD? Is it just as simple as just saying, "Hey, I have ADHD and therefore this is it," or what does that look like, Kat?
so that's certainly part of it. Not everybody is willing to talk about their diagnosis to their friends or their coworkers. I've found personally that people are really accepting and understanding when you do. So there's that. But sorry, I lost my train of thought. Um, it's really about being able to. So, for instance, I spent a lot of time trying not to fidget, trying to maintain eye contact at all times, trying to not talk too much, talk enough, not, sit still, not sits too still. Like there was this constant, and I was missing what was happening in front of me or in the present moment because I was so focused on sit still, don't fidget, you know, don't gaze off, don't interrupt, don't, and I'm not saying that we can't learn to better ourselves with skills, but it becomes like an obsession. And so
Mm.
you really miss what's going on because you're anxious and you're worried. And then after the conversation, what did I say? What did I do? And so the ability for me to be able to just say to people, look, I have ADHD. And sometimes I forget things. And sometimes I need to fidget when I'm talking to you. And by the way, when I fidget, when I'm talking to you, it's not because I'm not paying attention to you. It's specifically so that I can pay attention to you. And when you explain it like that, people are much more understanding than they are when they just think you're fidgety or,
Mm.
you're
Yeah.
had too much coffee. you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm caffeinated, but I'm not caffeinated so much that I fidget. But I like you. Well. I don't know. I'm a late in life diagnosis of ADHD. Right. So
Yep.
it's happened in the last year actually for me. For
Yeah.
my 50th birthday, I
Woo,
celebration.
yeah.
Yay! I
Mine
got.
50 is coming up too.
Ooh!
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
That's
So you
cool.
got the diagnosis, yeah?
Yep. So I got the diagnosis. So I'm I think I still am fighting it a little bit. I'm not as good with it as I'd like to be. I'm working on it. But talk to me, is there you read an article about ADHD guilt. What is that?
So that's so there's ADHD guilt and ADHD shame. And
Okay.
they're really hand in hand. So what ADHD shame looks like to me is I should have washed my hair. I really should have washed my hair. I needed to wash my hair today. Now I feel ashamed that I'm going outside when I didn't wash my hair. And I just couldn't do it. And you become ashamed of. And it starts young. We start comparing ourselves to our peers at a very young age. And when we're 4 and 5 and 6 and we're being told, sit still, you're not listening, we don't know what's wrong, but we do know that our peers are different. Our peers can do it. And so that makes us automatically feel like failures. We
Hmm.
can't do it. We can't sit still. We can't pay attention. We can't, etc. Um, And so there's a lot of shame built up around that and about like I up until I was in my 40s, I never held a job for more than 6 months ever in my whole
Wow.
life because I couldn't either I would get too bored and I'd job hop or the anxiety of trying to be the perfect employee would give me such mental health struggles that I couldn't function at work. And then that made me ashamed. And then you combined that with I then had children who had ADHD that I didn't know how to help. And so then I
Mm,
felt both shame and guilt because I didn't know how to help them. And particularly one of my children who, was a little more high needs and a little more emotionally dysregulated. I didn't know how to find resources. I didn't know how much of her behavior was actually the ADHD or was there something underlying. I didn't know, who to reach out to, where to go. And so even now, she's an adult. I still feel an immense amount of guilt because I didn't know what I didn't know, and her life could have been different. My life could have been different. And so we build up a lot of guilt and shame around that, especially people I see that are late diagnosed. Um, they all of a sudden feel like how much better could my life have been,
yeah. Yep.
right? Like, why didn't people catch it? Why did nobody notice? So there's a whole process of going through a late diagnosis of grieving and anger and disbelief, and then comes synthesis where we can say, okay, yeah, we have ADHD and we're creative, amazing people, with tons of talent and skills. And ADHD doesn't, it's a piece of me, you know.
It's not all who I am.
No, I'm a million other things. I'm a parent. I'm a dog lover. I'm a business owner. I'm a Democrat. I'm like I'm a lot of
Right.
different things. ADHD is just one of the things that defines me, and everybody that has ADHD. It's just a piece.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do we get to that acceptance? Talk to me about that process, Kat, because I'm not there yet. So I guess coach me, right? How do we do that, right? And I'm not, just
Yeah.
on the spot a little bit.
Well, so it's about so like what when you think about having ADHD, what kind of feeling does that like bring up?
Well, it's anxious for sure.
Hmm.
And your point about I bet I could have accomplished even more is a strong one. That's a really strong one for me.
Right. So ADHD coaching, what I do generally is work with people so that they can, um, go ahead and mourn what could have been. Like that's okay. So go ahead and mourn that, um, and then celebrate who you are. Right. Because you know the anxiety that you may feel around your diagnosis, that's from society. That's
Mm,
from culture saying, ADHD people look this way or that way or do this or do that. And it builds up a stigma that makes people kind of fear that being labeled. I can give you an example. I had a mom, I was working with a mom who she was a late diagnosed ADHD herself, and her child was now just being in the process of being diagnosed. And she was really struggling with she hadn't told him yet, and she was really struggling with putting a label on him and what that would do to him. And I said, "This is where what my job is." I said, "Well, let me ask you a question. When you were your child's age and you didn't know that you had ADHD, did you know that something was wrong and that there was something different about you?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, absolutely." I said, "What kind of difference would it have made in your life if you had known why? If somebody had been able to say, 'You're not broken. You're not bad. Your brain works differently. And let's figure out how to work with your brain.'" And the light that went into her face when she thought about that, she was my client who made me know that this is what I was meant to do. She contacted me the next, a week later. She was like, "You changed my life."
wow.
Um, because having compassion and education for yourself and your children and your coworkers and your friends who have ADHD, um, It's not. It can be a disability. It can be disabling. Absolutely. Um, and there's things about it that I hate. There's a big war going on in the ADHD community over, is it a superpower? Is it a disability? And I'm like, it can be both, right? Even superheroes have their kryptonite, right?
Yeah.
So I absolutely feel like some of the symptoms that might be related to ADHD that I have, like creativity, thinking outside the box, spontaneity, impulsivity, can be both good and bad. um, a lot of those things are things I like about myself, at least now. And so kind of sorting through the, like, what can we improve upon? What environment can we improve upon so that it works for us? And then how do we manage what's left?
Hmm.
You
There we
know,
go. Yeah.
so, you
That's
know,
pretty cool. That's really powerful. So, I was gonna that was gonna be my next question, right? Is it a superpower or a disability? I mean, I have a son. He's going to be 9, and he's got ADHD. And I got him as soon as he got diagnosed. I got him Peter Shankman's book that ADHD is my superpower, and I can tell you, changed his life.
right?
Like totally changed his life because now, or no, is it the boy with faster brain? That's what it is. Boy with faster brain. And
Yeah,
he's
there's a
like,
couple of good books out there.
yeah. And he's like, this is good because now I just know that my brain is different. Not good, not bad, but it's different. And
Exactly.
I think it's so interesting because having a label allows us to say, no, it's okay that I have this, but just know that I do have this. This is who I am. As far as, this is part of me. This is who I need to embrace. And I can tell you that, yeah, it's absolutely helped him.
Yeah, I think I understand. So there's a lot of people who feel like when you say it's a superpower, that you're kind of taking away from some of the difficulties that it can present. And I get that, because sometimes, especially in the youth years, it's a challenge. It's a real challenge, and I don't disagree with that. And it can still be a superpower. And if a kid or an adult can go from thinking they're broken to thinking they have a superpower, why would anybody complain about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, let us build our kids up. Kids with ADHD and other neurodivergence receive, on average, 10 times more negative input from adults around them than their neurotypical peers. 10 times.
Wow.
Right? Sit still. Stop doing that. You didn't do it right. You missed it. It's just an endless litany of what they're doing wrong. And I can tell you from personal experience what happens when you do that. I grew up and so I became a mom very young. I was 17, and I fully, with everything in me, until my children moved out of the house, believed that I was lazy, crazy, and incapable. That there was nothing I could do in life other than be a mom, and I wasn't 100% sure I was good at that,
Wow.
because everything in my life had told me I don't live up to my potential. I don't pay attention. I can't do this. I can't do that. Nobody had taken the time to see what I could do. And so neither did I. And so I leaned into it. Okay, I'm lazy and crazy. I'll be it.
I'm
Right?
going to be the best. I'm going to be the best.
That's right. And so then when my kids moved out, I had to really, like, now what? you know, like, now what? Because now I got, I had kids at, really young. So they moved out of the house. I was only in my early 40s. Like, I got a lot of life to live. I
Yeah.
want to do something with it. And so, I spent some time, therapy. I got an ADHD coach myself, which helped a lot. And I do both. I don't do both. I go to both therapy and coaching. I only provide coaching. I'm not a therapist. Um, and I do both. And I like my coaching clients to also have a therapist, because there are things I'm not equipped to handle. but really just embracing the fact that it's okay if I don't do things the same way that everybody else does. It's okay if it takes me longer to do something than it might take somebody else. Um, and then, becoming an entrepreneur, that's really the ADHD dream. I think so many of us ADHDers need that freedom, to kind of make our own rules. Um, so, yeah,
That's
it-
wild.
yeah,
That's wild. Well, so that 10 times more negative
10 times.
than their peers. I mean, we already, I hate to say this, but we already poured way too much negativity in the world anyway. And then
Right.
10x that, my
Yeah.
goodness. That just reminds me, I gotta ease up on my kid and
Right?
give him more
Everybody.
love and more, more sunshine and less, you gotta do it this way.
Yeah. I mean, helping our kids with autonomy, especially our ADHD kids, like one of their big needs is to feel like they're in charge, they're in control of themselves. And so every time we say, do this, do that, even if they were about to do it, they're not going to do it. Or they're going to argue, or, they're going to feel like you yelled at them, or,
Wow.
and so I work a lot with parents on becoming more of a collaborative and curious parent instead of a enforcer. And I work a lot with middle school, high school aged kids to build executive functioning. And high school kids, I'm trying to help them figure out what they want to do with their lives before they go get $100,000 into debt for a degree that they're not going to use. Because another statistic is 70% in the US, 70% of today's workforce does not use the college degree that they have. 70%.
So they don't use like they don't use anything, or
They're in a
they're
different
not in the major.
field,
Okay.
or they're not
Wow.
employed. Oh no, they are employed because they're employed. They're people in today's workforce. So
70%. That's 7
70.
out of 10 people. That's bananas.
Well, and it's because we're asking kids to make life career choices at 18.
Right.
What do you want to be with when you grow up? We start asking kids that when they're 4.
Right.
If they draw a picture, oh, he's going to be an artist. If they want to put a band-aid on you, ooh, he's going to be a doctor. Right? And we ask, I know it was in my kids' school work. They asked all the time, what do you want to be when you
Yeah.
grow up? What do you want to be? Right? And then by 17, 18, we're asking them to make these huge choices about getting themselves into debt potentially and deciding what they want to be for the next 60 years.
Yeah.
you know?
And yeah, and ADHD just makes that worse.
Way worse because, first of all, our kids with ADHD are 30% behind executive functioning than their neurotypical peers. So if you're talking to an 18-year-old, his or her executive functions may be delayed as much as by like 3 to 4 years. Right? So now you're asking a freshman to make that decision.
Wow.
Right. And
Wow.
so it does catch up the older they get, but it takes a while. And so our kids at 18 that have ADHD, and I'm not saying that all ADHD kids are that way because some kids have a very firm idea of what they want to do and they do it. But there's a lot of us out there, we don't, we job hop, we interest hop, we hobby hop. We like one thing, we spend a bunch of money and then we lose interest in it. We go to something else. That's a common thing. If you look at an ADHD and you ask them about their job history, most of the time you will find all different kinds of careers, right? Because they try all different kinds of things to see what works. Um, so I try to encourage kids in high school and parents to consider a lot of options. College is absolutely a wonderful thing, and for many people it's great. But going into a 4-year university right off the bat is just not always the best choice. Um,
So how do we work with that, Kat? What do we do? How can we, let's say that we're a leader that has some ADHD people on the team, and we have to be careful because we don't want to, we can't, there's a bit of a line there
Hmm.
from an HR perspective. So how do we make those accommodations?
So the best thing, I just did a panel on neurodiversity in the workforce too, and one of the best things that ever happened to me was um, my boss just came right out and asked me and asked everybody, like, what accommodations would make working here better or easier. And it kind of and it wasn't that she was going to necessarily give every single one, but it allowed people to kind of think about it and look around and be like, it would be better if I did this. It would be better if I was in a quieter office. It would be better, having options. That's like the number one thing for ADHD people, especially if you have if you're in like a company with many employees. One's not going to react the same way as the other, right? So I know people, for example, that like to, if they're going to take a class, they like to take it in one big, huge chunk. I also know people who would rather take 1 hour a week for 8 weeks. So, like, offering as many kinds of like options as possible is always like my first recommendation. And then just making sure that your employees know that it's a safe place to bring up a concern if they have it, right? To, know to be able to say, like, hey, this isn't working for me. I'm struggling with this and not feel like they're going to get fired.
Hmm.
Those are the kinds of things. And if I had to give one like piece of advice to like managers and business people and even friends of ADHD people, if you are going to ask them for a meeting, please tell them what the meeting is about.
Ooh, tell me more about this because I totally feel this one.
My gosh, the panic that I feel and many other ADHDers that I know when somebody says to me, um, I'm going to stop by tomorrow so we can talk, but doesn't tell me about what. I spend from now until they show up thinking of every possible thing that they might want to talk to me about, good, bad, or otherwise, right? And it creates anxiety. When and then 99% of the time, it's totally nothing, right? It's not a big deal. It's like, oh well, we're gonna change printers, like, oh, okay, fine. It's really not that big a deal. So, and I've had people do that to me too, where they'll set an appointment on my calendar, but not say what it's for. Meeting with the boss, like, you
Yeah.
know, so, and all it takes is like, hey, Phil, could we meet tomorrow for 20 minutes to talk about the new printers? Like, right. And now it's the printers. You're not about to get fired. You're just going to talk about the printers. But for a neurodivergent person, I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to, ADHD people, that's a thing they say. Like, please don't leave me hanging like that. Like, I can't. So
That's me.
yeah,
That's me.
yeah, just tell people, right, like, or, right up front what you're going to talk to them
Yeah.
about, because otherwise it just like right now I could feel like a burning in my stomach, like
Yeah.
how
It's
that feels.
and then
Yeah.
anxiety. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I've had family members do it too, like not intentionally, just, I'm like, no, no, you have to tell me right now. It's like if my partner is like, I'd like to talk later. And I'm like, nope. We got to do it right
Right. Yeah, let's go. Let's go, right? Let's talk about that right now. That's interesting.
now.
So, how do we express that need without, I mean, do we just say it like, "Hey, I need to know," or what?
So,
I
I
mean, is
mean,
there a better way?
when possible, yeah, I think direct is the absolute best way. One of the things that some I've seen some employers doing now that I think is great is they have kind of like a worksheet that an employee can fill out that is a little bit about themselves personally, about how they like to be communicated with. Um,
Oh, yeah.
I think that's amazing, because if assuming the employer then goes back and looks at it, um, But as an employee, either, just saying like, "Hey, I get really anxious about meetings when I don't know what they're about. Would it be okay if you just give me the, topic of the meeting, etc." Or, you know, and every time I've ever done that, people have been like, "Oh yeah, fine. Yeah, like it's no big deal." Right? But it's a big deal to
Yep.
me to not know.
Yeah. Yeah. So ask for what you want, authentically be you, all of that. That's really
Ask
good.
and one of if you are a person who has a difficult time asking for help or asking for things you need, um, here's a way to reframe it. Asking the people who are around you who care about you for what you need is a gift to them because it allows them to show you that how much they value you, by knowing what you need and accommodating that,
Mm.
right? It's like a gift. It's like I want to have this relationship with you, and this is what I need in order to make that happen, right?
Yeah. And why wouldn't you give that to somebody?
Right?
Why would we not? Boy, that's so that's so powerful, Kat. So how do we get started on this journey, right? If we want to handle our ADHD better, if we want to handle and be better for other people, I guess those are the two questions I've got here. How do we help ourselves better? And then how do we help others better?
So when it's accessible um, to you, the first thing I'd say is an ADHD coach, but I'd go a step further and say an ADHD coach who has both been trained and actually has ADHD is really and been the best. Everybody I've talked to has said that is like I have to have an ADHD coach who has ADHD. Um, so if you can start there, it's not always accessible. Insurances don't cover it, so it's not always accessible. So other things you can do are things like follow a coach like me who gives a lot of free content and free blogs and free newsletters and a lot of stuff for free because it wouldn't have been accessible to me when I was, younger. So I try very hard to make things levels of accessible. A therapist who's trained in ADHD, you would be surprised to know most are not,
Mm.
um, not, not fully trained. They get like a chapter, you know.
Oh,
So somebody who's had actual like ADHD experience, and then there's a lot of books, there's a lot of websites. Really, the what I have found the best thing for me is to get curious with myself. So when I'm having a struggle that I am pretty sure is an ADHD thing, I try to really dig into like what's underneath it. For example, the shower thing, when I was like, I would go days without taking a shower because, well, I didn't know why. I would be like, I need to take a shower, and then wouldn't take a shower. And then the next day, I need to take, and then, 4 days later, I'd get in the shower and I'd be like, this is amazing. I don't know why I don't take a shower more often, right? I'm going to take a shower every day. And then the next day, no, right? When I really dug into like, what was it about getting in the shower that was such a roadblock for me? I was bored. It was that simple.
mm.
I was bored. And then when I addressed that by either having a podcast that I listen to while I'm in the shower, sometimes my partner comes and talks to me while I'm in the shower, suddenly I'm able to get in the shower much more often. But it's really a matter of like digging into like what's going on. Because it could have been I didn't like the way the water felt on me. I could have had a sensory issue. It could have been I didn't like to break from what I was doing to go do the thing, right? Like there's a lot of different reasons. So trial and error. ADHDers are known for like trying something and being like, that didn't work and like throwing it away, right? Whereas if you have a coach will say like, well, what about it did work? Like, was there
Mm.
any piece of it that worked? And then we'll take that and build off that. If not, then we'll try another thing. So that's the other thing about coaching. You have to be willing to trial and error. Like a coach is not going to hand you the 10 keys to successfully adulting. Like it's just we'd love to. Um, but it's a personalized individual process, and so there's a lot of things that we can say work for a lot of people, but it's still going to be a lot of, "You try this week, come back and talk to me, and let's see what worked and what didn't, and then we'll go from there." But be kind to yourself, um, and your coworkers and your friends and your loved ones who have ADHD. Um, if you're a parent who has a kid with ADHD, particularly if they are often emotionally dysregulated, tantrums, crying, throwing, screaming, maybe even at you, um, please remember that your child is not giving you a hard time. Your child is having a hard time. And when you
Mm,
can look at it like that, you will be able to have so much more compassion for your child. Your child is
mm,
not misbehaving because they want to misbehave. Kids want to do well when they can.
wow. Wow, that's quite a reframe there
I just got
from
teary.
I know. Well, it makes me a little verklempt as well because I think about that and I think about again, I think about my son. I think about, is he giving me a hard time or is he just having a hard time? And if he's having a hard time, well then I want to be there to help him.
Right.
I want to be there to be a partner against whatever's challenging him, as opposed to he's giving me something that I don't want. And it's
Right.
such an interesting shift. That's such a powerful shift. So,
Mm,
Kat, that's great. We could talk for hours. This
we
is
could.
fantastic. Yeah. So, friends, if you're listening in and you didn't see the bottom of the screen, Kat's website is at allbelong.com. That's ALLBELONG.com. She has lots of great stuff up there.
I do.
I haven't read every blog post that you've done, but I've read a lot of them and they're really, really good. There's a lot of help there. They're very simple, which is something that I love as well. So if you had one book though, is there one book, Kat, that you found is especially helpful or one that's
S-
maybe you're looking at now?
well, so the one I would say for parents is a book called Calm the Chaos, by
Okay.
Dana Abraham, I think. And it has a lot of those excellent reshifting, kind of scripting ways to get from like the heart of the storm to the calm.
There we go. Calm the chaos.
Calm the chaos. Yeah.
That's a good start. And again, get started at allbelong.com. Lots of great
Yes.
stuff there from my friend Kat Sweeney. Kat, you're awesome.
Thank